Avatar: The Last Airbender show will be more of a remix than a cover of the original, at least according to the showrunners. In a recent interview with IGN, which I'm sure many of you have already heard about, showrunner Albert Kim and executive producer Jabbar Raisani, and I'm very sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, said that they were aiming to encompass the spirit of the original show while also allowing the narrative to adapt to new serialized Netflix drama formats. And I think that is fine. I, like many of you probably are very cautious going into this adaptation, especially now that they've announced that Sokka will not have those sexist tendencies that he had at the beginning of the show, which was such a vital part of his character and his development later on. But I'm determined to keep an open mind when going into the show because I'm a firm believer that adaptations often don't and should not be an exact replica of the original material. Because frankly, what is the point of doing an adaptation of something if you've already got the material there? And for live action adaptations, the motivation for creating that adaptation is usually so that you can have a deeper real life connection with these characters and with the story. And with that being said, here's what the showrunners themselves have said will be included in this adaptation, and what I personally hope and I think they should add as well. We definitely will have a deeper look into Zuko and Azula's backstory and their childhood in the Fire Nation. And this includes the Agnikai between Ozai and Zuko, which we never fully got to see enacted in the animation show. I also think it's interesting that they're bringing Azula into the forefront from the beginning, where she wasn't really a major player until season 2. In this interview, they also said that they're going to be focusing on the Fire Nation, especially in episode 1, so you get a good backstory and a good grounding for the whole narrative. And this also means that we are going to see the attack on the Southern Air Temple, which essentially wiped out the remainders of the Airbenders. And that's part of what the showrunners say they want to do with this new show. They want to make it a bit more adult and they want it to appeal to the Game of Thrones audience. These episodes are not going to be 20 minutes. They're not going to be standalone Adventure of the Week episodes. These are going to be hour-long serialized Netflix drama episodes that will appeal to broader audiences. Another thing that the showrunners said they changed from the original is that Aang's journey is a lot more purposeful. They alluded to the fact that at the start, Aang will have a vision of something terrible happening in the Northern Water Tribe and that he has to go there to stop it. And so in that way, there's not going to be any side quests to go penguin sledding or see the elephant koi, which I know a lot of fans will be bummed aren't included because it almost takes away from Aang's goofiness and need to be a kid. But there are other ways that they can show that Aang is a kid and goofy while also being incredibly dedicated to helping the world. If I were to compare this show to something like Lord of the Rings, which is also an epic fantasy journey, then I'd say that those side quests are essentially parts of the extended versions of the films where Merry and Pippin go off and talk to trees for half an hour. It doesn't add much to the narrative or help it move forward at all. But since we know that we're getting a deeper backstory and a deeper look into the world and the characters, then here's what I really want to see in the show as well. Suki's backstory and more of the Kyoshi warriors. I'm not sure how possible this is because Suki is very much a side character, but I've always loved the story of the Kyoshi warriors and I've always loved Suki's backstory and I wanted to know more about her. A major part of Suki's role in season 1 was helping Sokka to realize his own sexism. And if Sokka isn't going to be sexist, then you gotta give her something else, which is where her lovely backstory and her entire life can come into play. Along a similar vein, Master Pakku. In the original series, Pakku was such an important character. He was one of the first major obstacles Katara had in relation to waterbending, and she overcame him in such a badass way by just proving him wrong that women are actually as strong as men. But he was also important so that we could realize that Sokka is not the same person that we knew from the beginning. And so if you have to take away Sokka's sexism, then you at least have to let Katara kick Pakku's ass. It's the bare minimum. With regards to the Fire Nation backstory and Zuko and Azula's, I'm also really excited to see what they do with Zuko and Azula's mother. And I've heard that they delve a lot more into that in the comics, but I haven't actually read the comics, but that does mean that the material exists, so it can be adapted. And I think their mother is such an important character because it shows not only how Zuko learned to be kind, but also how Azula learned to be spiteful. Because Zuko and Azula were a favorite of one parent each. And that favoritism weighs on them throughout the entire show. And it is so important. And so if we are delving more into the Fire Nation backstory, then I want to see that story. Also, Iroh's story. And personally, I don't think we will ever get a complete Fire Nation backstory if we don't learn about the Dragon of the West. And though it may kill us in the long run, I think it would be really good if we see flashbacks of his relationship with his son and then his relationship with Zuko. Because essentially what the creators have told us in this interview is that they are going to be doing a lot more showing with this TV show than what was done in the animation show, which was more telling because it was aimed at more children. And so if they're planning on showing us more backstory, then they better show us more backstory. Overall, as annoyed as I am about Sokka's sexism being removed, I am tentatively excited about this show and we'll be talking about it quite a lot, especially when it comes out. Let me know what you guys are excited for.